Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Black Literature, Black History. This is Jason Williams. Tonight we're going to continue in the book, Zora Neale Hurston, A Life in Letters. And tonight I'm going to read you a few pieces from that book. I'm going to read a letter that she wrote to an artist and writer named Jane Bellow. I'm going to read that letter to you because it's just a very nice letter and it demonstrates some of Zora Neale Hurston's writing abilities. I'm going to read a review that Alain Locke wrote on Their Eyes Were Watching God, which Zora Neale Hurston did not like, did not appreciate, and then I'm going to read you her response to Alain Locke defending Their Eyes Were Watching God and some insults that she hurled towards Alain Locke. It's a very interesting letter. She sent it to be published, but of course they didn't publish it. But that's what we're going to cover tonight. Now, before we get into those letters, in the previous video, I talked about how Zora Neale Hurston was, through these letters that I have been reading, it seems that she abandoned the black community, and all of her correspondence and all of her acquaintances became white people. And in a letter that she wrote recently that I read, she traveled to Cincinnati. And when she was in Cincinnati, she said, "It's curious that only white people around here know me, and it seems that none of the brown-skinned people around here have heard of me." Well, from reading her letters and her correspondences and acquaintances, I predicted that that was going to happen because she left her community behind. Well, I don't want to say she left them behind, but she just cut herself off from her community. Like she writes insulting letters about Langston Hughes, and then she was writing insulting letters about W.B. Du Bois, and she really talked about Alain Locke, and she didn't make it public, but all the things that she talked about bad about Alain Locke, she put in this letter that she sent off to be published that I'm going to read to you later. And another thing that I mentioned in the last video was I wanted to see what happened between Zora Neale Hurston from the 1930s, where we get a lot of what we call cooning today and all of this tap dancing and calling herself pickaninny and this and that, to the 1940s Zora Neale Hurston, which I have some letters that she had written back in that time period in my previous videos where she's more militant. Well, I got into that this past week or so reading these letters, and Zora Neale Hurston got into politics, and she wanted to voice her opinion in politics, and she wrote her autobiography, which we're not going to read on this page. We're not going to read her autobiography because it's full of inaccuracies about her life, and she really didn't want to write it when she was asked to write it. However, there are bits and pieces of her autobiography that are politically charged, and we'll do research and we will find that, and then I'll present that to you on this page. So to begin I want to read Alain Locke's review of Their Eyes Were Watching God. From review by Alain Locke, Opportunity, June 1st, 1938. And now, Zora Neale Hurston and her magical title, Their Eyes Were Watching God. Janie's story should not be retold, it must be read. But as always, thus far with this talented writer, setting and surprising flashes of contemporary folklore are the main point. Her gift for poetic phrase, for rare dialect, and folk humor keep her flashing on the surface of her community and her characters, and from diving down deep either to the inner psychology of characterization or to sharp analysis of the social background. It is folklore fiction at its best, which we gratefully accept as an overdue replacement for so much faulty local color fiction about Negroes. But when will the Negro novelist of maturity, who knows how to tell a story convincingly, which is Miss Hurston's cradle gift, come to grips with motive fiction and social document fiction? Progressive Southern fiction has already banished the legend of these entertaining pseudo-primitives whom the reading public still loves to laugh with, weep over, and envy. Having gotten rid of condescension, let us now get over oversimplification. So that's Alain Locke's review of Their Eyes Were Watching God. And now, let us read Zora Neale Hurston's response to that. The Chick with One Hen. That's the title of her response to Alain Locke's review. In the January issue of Opportunity, Dr. Alain Leroy Locke published something which he calls a criticism of the Negro books published in 1937. No matter which way you look at it, the piece is an example of rank dishonesty. It has not the innocence of conviction in error. It is conscious fraud. Dr. Locke knows that he knows nothing about Negroes, and he should know after the New Negro, that's what Alain Locke published, which we're going to review that. After the New Negro, that he knows nothing about either criticism or editing, both being branches of the same thing. Dr. Locke, conscious of his degree, pants to be a leader, and in his eagerness to attract attention, he rushes at any chance to see his name in print, however foolish his offering. For instance, he says in what he calls a criticism of Their Eyes Were Watching God, that the great force of the book was in the folklore in it, as in my other two books. Now, either Dr. Locke does not know Negro folklore, or he lies with malice aforethought. There is not a folk tale in the entire book. A folk character is mentioned in one connection that does not affect the story in any way. If Dr. Locke knows nothing about the matter, then he should have kept quiet. If he does know better, then he should have felt the obligation of his many degrees to be honest. To his discomfort, I must say that those lines came out of my own head. In the final paragraph, he says that the book has condescension, which is just another instance of Dr. Locke's trying to bruise the brains of the public with his personal angle. I know just why he said it, and I am going to point it out. Dr. Locke wants to be a leader. He felt sure that his degrees would guarantee that much at least. But the time has passed when Negroes bowed down before mere letters in a piece of paper, and so far Dr. Locke has offered nothing else to the scene. Up to now, Dr. Locke has not produced one single idea or suggestion of an idea that he can call his own. So far, he has not had the courage to even champion an idea that belonged to someone else until it was already generally accepted. He waits good to see which way procession is going, and then he is very sure. He rushes up to the head of it by a forced march in the dark and says, "Come on, parade, I'm your leader." He will approve of anything that is already approved of. So lacking in both talent and courage, he has failed to be that which he yearns for, a leader. Now, this brings us to the second clause, when he says that there is condescension in Their Eyes Were Watching God. He is complaining that I do not write like Sterling Brown, and that constitutes a crime in the good doctor's present feeling about Sterling Brown. Not that Dr. Locke has any sympathy with either the downtrodden Negro nor the working man, but Sterling Brown is committed to that political philosophy that is enough for Locke. His impatience with everyone who does not agree with Sterling Brown could be likened to the fury of a hen with one lone chick, but in this case, the ideas belong to Sterling Brown, so we have to say the chick with one hen. Sterling, it seems, consults with Locke, so he must be right. Nobody objects to Sterling Brown having his own political viewpoint. He is free to write volumes and volumes about it, but not between the covers of my books. My great crime is that I did not consult Dr. Locke, considering that all of the great critics of America approved of the book. Dr. Locke certainly would have approved of it, and had I consulted him. And God help those who go ahead and succeed without consulting him. An instance of Dr. Locke's insincerity I remember well at Howard University, that he was one of the leaders in a hullabaloo against the singing of Negro spirituals. That was before so many people in high places had praised them. Now he touches his lips all about and shivers with ecstasy when he speaks of those beautiful and sensitive things. I remember his trembling with emotion over the faithfulness to Negro religion in the green pastures, which is anything you want to call it but the truth. But nobody was going to catch Dr. Locke not chiming in with anything so popular as that. Dr. Locke is abstifically a fraud, both as a leader and as a critic. He knows less about Negro life than anyone in America, and if what he did in The New Negro is a sample, he does not know anything about editing and criticism either. You can tell by reading what he writes that he intends to be a great big fraud. It does succeed in being a fraud, but not a big one. He intends to pass off his personal touches as criticism. He is a public turncoat and ought to be pointed out as such. He has set himself up as an opinion passer without having the material for his opinions. I will send my toenails to debate him on what he knows about Negroes and Negro life, and I will come personally to debate him on what he knows about literature on the subject. This one who lives by quotation is trying to criticize people who live by life. Zora Neale Hurston, Eatonville, Florida. So that's her response to Alain Locke. Very sharp, and she wanted it to be published, but of course they didn't publish it. And now I'm just going to read from her letter, a letter that she wrote to Jane Bellow. That's Jane Bellow, B-E-L-O. I was not very sure who Jane Bellow was. I looked her up, and I believe she was a writer and an artist during this time period. But the reason why I'm reading this letter is because it was a very unique letter amongst the rest of the letters that Zora Neale Hurston wrote. And I'm going to start with the second paragraph. But this is to Jane Bellow, Box 173, Maitland, Florida, December 3rd, 1938. But this letter is not to talk about me. My feelings are not so valuable after all. This is about little Jane Bellow, a tiny ivory casket housing an infinite beauty and worth. This valuable container of priceless things has been in the hands of careless handlers who not only had the intelligence to look inside, they lacked the appreciation for the marvelous handiwork of the casket itself. Now this precious thing must be retrieved from the hands of the blind and the dumb and placed where its worth can be appreciated. I put this priceless thing with all its holds into the hands of Jane Bellow. She must care for it and protect it from the bruising contact of the puling insensitive. If you, Jane Bellow, fail in this your stewardship, then you have failed not yourself alone, you have failed humanity. Your care of precious things I entrust to you may seem to others to be egocentric and the like, but there must be singleness of purpose in any great endeavor, and so you must risk the accusation of self-interest in the interest of what is inside the cosmic box. For once, let out a glimmer of the inner light, and you shall be that other Jane Bellow which was from the beginning, but which has been mutilated in attempts to follow the pattern of the common herd. Your first great work will be the trance. But that is only a beginning. Like Hercules, scramble up your narrow and rugged path with the light of the blue hills of fame and glory for your light. You have genius within your jewel box. Use it. You are fortunate enough to have financial means. Cease to apologize for it and begin to use it as a weapon to clear your path to your destiny. It was meant to be. Bon voyage. Go, my little Jane, with the light of the future in your eyes. You cannot fail. You have not been successful in your other experiments because the butterfly was attempting to return to the caterpillar stage. Spread your wings and soar. You have no place in your life for the pooling weaklings who would sap your vital fluid. Be true to your destiny and Jane Bellow. My love, my love, my love, my love, my love, faithfully, Zora. So that and a few other letters that she wrote to Jane Bellow were of that quality until Jane Bellow got married, and then the letters kind of changed and became normal letters. Now, the biographer who compiled these letters said that there's speculation that Zora Neale Hurston was romantically involved with Jane Bellow or romantically interested in Jane Bellow, but there's no proof of that. They said that in Zora Neale Hurston's autobiography that she said that she was in love with Jane Bellow, but there's no evidence to suggest that it's actually anything romantically or sexually between Jane Bellow and Zora. And many artists during this time period, they look into their sexuality and they want to take from what they write just certain letters or certain phrases or the way that they depict people, and they want to throw on them some sort of sexuality, or because during this time period there were many artists, and today in art there's many homosexuals and bisexuals, and today even gender differences. But without evidence, and even with evidence, I won't go very deep into that. But Wallace Thurman, in his book Infants of the Spring, there is a conversation between artists which is representative of the group that they had with the Niggerati, or Langston Hughes, Wallace Thurman, Zora Neale Hurston, and others in their little group, where they talk about homosexuality. Well, actually it's about bisexuality, but we'll get into that when we get into Wallace Thurman and Infants of the Spring. So this is Jason Williams with Black Literature, Black History. Have a nice evening.